Welcome to today's Explainer. Let's kick things off with a pretty massive question. What do you actually think freedom is? I mean, is it just being left alone, or is it something a whole lot deeper? If you're a first-year political science student joining us today, go ahead and consider this your foundational lecture on how egalitarian societies truly balance the rights of the individual with the needs of the community. We're going to unpack the theoretical framework of communal autonomy, and honestly, we're going to challenge our very baseline understanding of political legitimacy altogether. We'll see how true legitimacy isn't just handed down from some boss or ruler on high, but is actually a structure practiced daily, right from the ground up.
So here's our syllabus for this session. 1. The illusion of freedom. 2. Defining individual autonomy. 3. Managing collective autonomy. 4. The affective principle. And 5. The living dialectic. Okay, let's dive right in and build this socio-political architecture. Starting with Section 1. The illusion of freedom. Concession versus practice.
Now, to really grasp this framework, we've got to take a hard look at how freedom actually operates in our current systems. Think about this quote from the source material. A slave allowed Sunday off to attend church may experience freedom in a limited sense, but never autonomy. That's a heavy thought, right? In a hierarchical system, what we casually call freedom usually comes with major implicit restrictions. Having Sunday off might feel like freedom, but since someone else holds the key to the cage, that open door, it's just a temporary privilege. It's a carefully packaged concession granted by an elite to a subordinate. It is not a fundamental, unshakable right. The ultimate authority still rests with the master, not the individual.
And that brings us to a really strict theoretical distinction between hierarchical freedom and communal autonomy. In a hierarchy, freedom is reversible. It is totally conditional, it can be snatched away on a whim, and it is permanently subordinate to whoever holds the structural power. True communal autonomy, on the other hand, is an inherent lived practice. It's a whole thing. It can't just be granted by a higher power, and it's literally incompatible with hierarchy and domination. Autonomy is the unyielding practice of self-governance across all dimensions of your life, totally unmediated by a ruling class.
All right, let's lay the first pillar of our theoretical framework in Section 2, defining individual autonomy, the self and property.
You can think of individual autonomy as this absolute, impenetrable boundary drawn right around your person and your personal effects. A society that fails to uphold this boundary is honestly just reproducing authoritarianism under a new, maybe friendlier-sounding name. What you read, who you hang out with, how you express yourself, and what you do with your own body, these are decisions where external authority literally has zero jurisdiction. No committee, no matter how democratic they claim to be, gets to impose a mandate over your mind, your physical body, or your personal sphere. Now, as first-year poli-sci students, getting this next distinction right is absolutely crucial for the rest of your academic career. Personal property and private property are not the same thing in this framework. Personal property involves the things you actually use. Your clothes, the home you live in, the car you drive. These give you personal security and identity, and they are fully protected under individual autonomy. Private property, though, is categorically distinct. In this context, private property refers to capital or the means of production that's used specifically to exploit others for profit. So, renting out multiple homes or a fleet of cars for financial gain exercises power over other people, which just perpetuates subordination. So the rule of thumb, respecting personal property is justice. Maintaining private property is hierarchy.
But listen, individual autonomy is not just a free pass for rugged individualism. There are hard limits. You have absolute freedom to choose your outfit today or what you're going to eat for lunch. But the exact second you decide to take your lunch trash and dump it into a shared river running through your town, you have crossed a critical threshold. Your action is now materially impacting the health and safety of other people. The moment that impact hits, it's no longer an individual matter. Your individual autonomy ends right there, and the issue shifts entirely into the realm of collective concern.
And that threshold brings us perfectly to the second pillar of our architecture in Section 3, managing collective autonomy, shared resources, and free association.
Basically, when an issue impacts multiple people, collective autonomy takes over. And this is managed democratically and horizontally. That means no top-down bosses, no elected reps making shady backroom deals, just peer-to-peer organization by the people who actually live there. Depending on the scale of the issue, this governance is handled by neighborhood councils, specific task committees, or municipal assemblies. It's literally designed so that communal life is shaped collectively by the very people embedded in it.
Just think about your own neighborhood for a second. If you're laying out a community garden, setting up rules for a shared tool library, managing the local water supply, or planning zoning changes, these aren't solo ventures. These are concrete realities that impact the daily lives of tons of people in the community. So they absolutely demand horizontal, collective decision-making. No single individual gets to unilaterally dictate how a shared resource is used or distributed.
But there is a very strict academic rule governing this collective sphere. No one can ever be coerced into actions or beliefs. Collective autonomy has a hard, unyielding limit. It must never overstep back into individual autonomy. You simply cannot force someone's participation. If you force a neighbor to join a council against their will or mandate their involvement in a collective project, the entire architecture of free association completely crumbles, and society rapidly devolves right back into the exact authoritarianism it was trying to escape.
So what keeps this all balanced? That brings us to Section 4, the affectee principle, the essential synthesizer.
To stop collective autonomy from turning into what political scientists call the tyranny of the majority, where 51% of the population relentlessly dictates the lives of the 49%, we need the affectee principle. This is the indispensable rule guaranteeing that the affectees, meaning the actual stakeholders bearing the weight of the consequences, have the ultimate say. The collective might gather to hash out a broad issue, but the power to finalize the decision rests squarely with those whose daily lives will be directly altered by the outcome.
And what makes this principle so fascinating is how it acts as a structural failsafe. It actively stops marginalized identities from being outvoted by an unaffected majority under the guise of democracy. For example, if a collective decision specifically concerns women's reproductive health, women must not only be part of the deliberation, they must hold the final authority. Likewise, any ecological or structural decisions about indigenous lands must inherently prioritize the voices and the final consensus of indigenous peoples.
Let's look at a highly practical example. Imagine a neighborhood meeting debating a new childcare center. The whole block might vote on the location or the municipal funding for the project, right? Because communal space and shared funds affect everybody. But what about the actual educational curriculum, or the daily operating hours, or specific dietary rules for the toddlers? Well, the affectee principle dictates that only the parents, the guardians, and the caregivers actually using the facility get the final gavel on those matters. They're the ones living with the direct consequences, so they hold the structural authority.
Let's synthesize all of this in our final section, Section 5, the living dialectic, balancing self and society.
We can clearly map out the catastrophic results of getting this balance wrong. Building an egalitarian society is kind of like walking a razor's edge. If a society completely denies individual autonomy in favor of the collective, it rapidly devolves into pure conformity, coercion, and, honestly, totalitarianism. But on the flip side, if you deny collective autonomy in the name of absolute individualism, social life just shatters. The community fragments into deep isolation, hyper-competition, and profound alienation. Liberatory politics can only really flourish when the affectee principle actively mediates between these two extremes.
Ultimately, the core argument of this entire framework is that the commune is not just a rigid set of rules. It is a living, breathing dialectic. Now, a dialectic isn't just some stagnant compromise. It's a dynamic, ongoing conversation where two seemingly opposing forces are constantly informing, challenging, and enriching one another. When correctly balanced through the affectee principle, the freedom of the individual and the freedom of the collective don't contradict each other at all. They actually rely on one another. Autonomy here is whole, it is inherent, and it's built from the ground up every single day.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you to evaluate the societal structures you interact with every single day. Look closely at the systems on your campus, in your workplace, or in your national government. Based on the rigorous theoretical definitions we've explored in this lecture, ask yourself, is your freedom a practiced inherent autonomy, or is it just a carefully packaged concession? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the structures around you.